back to the Berg Podcast. Thanks for joining us. Today we have myself, Bryan. We've got Ford.
Hey, how's it going?
And we've got Dan.
Hey, guys.
And we're going to keep working through this series that we've been working through, talking about some of our core values and what they mean to each of us and what maybe give you some insight as to how they were developed. And the one we're going to talk through this week is act as an owner. And so just a brief description, you can find that on our website. But we take ownership of our work. Everything we do should be worth putting our name on. No task or interaction is too insignificant for us to be proud of. So let's just work through that one. Let's unpack it a little bit.
All right. I will go forward with this in the fact that it has a twofold meaning for me. The one side is part of that description in that for each of us, whether we have to write the checks out or we get a check each week or we have a team under us or we are the new guy on the crew, everything we do, one of the cool things about construction is that we get to drive by a job site 6 months after it's done, a year after it's done, and we can, if it's well constructed, we can be proud of that we were there, we helped out on that project. And so from that perspective, it might be literally grouting an inlet or something very small, but it's all part of that whole job because everything is a fabric tied together. The second part of it for me is the stewardship of the stuff around us. And, I saw a sign the other day. It was actually an Instagram post, but it was like, take care of your equipment because it takes care of you. And so acting as an owner from that perspective is that, whatever you're running, whether it's a shovel, it's a machine, it's a truck, managing that and as if it was your own is very important because everyone notices the clean truck or the machine or the next guy that has to get in that machine and it's well greased. That shows an ownership of and responsibility for each person doing the best with the tools they have in front of them at all times.
I think that's a great place to jump off. And maybe we just even split those into kind of two different topics for just a second, right? And we talk about, that personal nature of ownership, sort of that pride piece. Why is that important? That that the satisfaction of getting to look back at something that either you did individually or you were a part of as a team, and thinking it was literally worth being recognized for, or worth being a part of, or something that you can metaphorically sign your name in the concrete before you walk away.
Well, I think that part of what we're being part of with partners as with like Bill Witt and stuff is the fact that how important construction is, especially excavating, and how it ties to everything else. We don't sell petroleum, we don't do things like that, but everything we do is the base, the starting point for a new house, a new building, or repairing something that's broken. And so from that side, the pride of work and the ability to have someone else, even if you drive by and you're proud of it, but someone else drive by and go, that looks like a great project across the board. The equipment lined up at the end of the day in a nice line, the trash cleaned up. It all is part of, your own personal pride. If you see an employee somewhere and they have a beautiful vehicle and they're very proud of it, and, at lunchtime they're out wiping down the windows because a little dust got on it. But then you see them on a job site and you get in their machine and there's coffee cups and stuff on there that doesn't correlate. So part of this is being your same person, both at your job as you are in your daily life outside of work.
Well, and I think so many of us that ended up in this field, whether it be excavation or construction as a larger group, we all are sort of tactile, like physical. We like to be able to see that we've done something. Some people, working in technology fields, they could write code all day. They could do all these things all day. And at the end of the day, they have something, but you can't physically see what it is. Now, it can be valuable and it can be useful. It can create an end result that is needed. But there's not something there that's physically present, that's there. You can touch it, you can feel it. And I think that speaking to the pride in building something, that's a big piece of it. The other piece that when Ford was talking, sort of, it got me back to an older version of one of the things we used to say. Now we say act like an owner, or act as an owner, and have that ownership mentality. And I wrote it down when Ford was talking. Was we used to say you needed a farmer's mentality, and what that meant to Ford and I, and I'll speak for both of us, was farmers, if they don't have a successful day, a successful week, a successful month, a successful season, they don't eat. There's no food. There's no, we're not talking about big crop share farmers. We're talking about a small farm. They're making themselves survivable. They have to own every step of the way. And early on, we found, sometimes to our own detriment, that we really like to have people who had that mentality, and we would actually prioritize that mentality over experience. Now, as we got bigger and we needed people with more specific skill sets, we had to value those skill sets. But when we can find somebody with the skill set we need, with that sort of farmer's mentality, which plays right into an owner's mentality, it means you're gonna take that piece of what you're doing, that piece of your job, and you're gonna own it entirely. And you're gonna be responsible for it, and you're gonna deliver an end product that is satisfying to everybody in the group. And if each of us do that, we get to a better spot as a team. So that's really sort of what it means to me. And when Ford was talking, it sort of rang in my head that we used to talk about that farmer's mentality.
Yeah. So, and something you just said there, just to touch on it for a second. It's culture, right? But it may not have even been intentional. But when you can put those things together, like you said, like we wanted people who would work until the job got done, who would own their piece of it, take the responsibility, and know that the success of them, the organization, their teammates, was dependent on them doing their part, right? So that was one thing. And then even beyond that, as we've broadened the scope of what we do, now not only do we need people who possess like very specific skills at sometimes, but they've got to also know like and own their piece, right? So like from a cultural perspective, it's really sort of defined, I think, in a lot of ways, how we operate. Because, when we're successful as a unit, it's both of those things. It's people who are not only willing to take responsibility for their part of what has to get done, but also and work like it's like their teammates depend on them. But they also then take and learn and apply the skills that either they've brought with them or that we've been able to help them grow into, and then utilize those skills to be more impactful in that.
Yeah, and I think sort of on that, another one of the things that we think about, and I sort of said, I think I probably said it just off the cuff, and then I was pleased with myself because I thought it was pretty clever, was I used to say, I can't whittle culture. Like we ended up at a spot where we built this thing, as a team, and the team wasn't Ford and I, it wasn't Ford, Bryan and I. The team was this bigger group of 20 or 30 people who all sort of worked the same way and wanted to be in the same environment working. And we ended up at this spot where we were like, we enjoy working this way. We enjoy working within this set of rules, so to speak. And that's really what got us to our goals and our vision and all those things, was that we all sort of agreed this is the best way for us to work. And so then we end up at the spot when we talk about all of these, like act as an owner. And it's so simple, so easy to talk about, because it was such a natural place for us to be, that we sort of do that. And once we created that environment, I almost feel like it's self-fulfilling, that then people who want to be a part of that, they see it and they join the team because they want that same thing. And act as an owner is a really big one, because it leads to all the autonomy that we allow in trying to let people just be themselves and do their job.
Yeah, and you said something really interesting there, and it just made me think. And all of us in some way are sports guys, right? But like, you can't whittle culture, and I find that really interesting, because It's very true. But the other thing that's interesting about it is you can't like teach somebody about the desire to win, right? And in some ways, we're not talking about wins and losses on a scoreboard, but we're talking about winning and losing in the game of life here, or as a organization, and that's an important one. So I mean, like in some ways, when we are at our best, it's because we're surrounded ourselves with people who have a desire to win, to be successful, desire to regardless of the scope of their contribution, to maximize it.
Yeah, and I think one thing that is challenging when we do this series is that a lot of these core values tie together to something else, or that, we could start going off on a tangent about something, but we're trying to stay specifically to this, but it does tie to everything else. Act as an owner. Another thing that it means is that, like, we don't do everything right all the time. That's not realistic. But if something does go wrong, act as owner means that we admit that we messed up. We figure out how we can do it better next time, that something doesn't happen. And we tell the people that we need to tell that something didn't go right. We don't try and hide it. We don't try and blame it on something else. Screw-ups happen, and we are not going to be excited about screw-ups. That's not that type of thing. But at the same time, if a screw-up happens and the person owns that challenge, it works better for everybody, because that's a learning experience. And it also allows us to deal with whoever else we need to deal with if we know internally that something happened. If somebody doesn't tell us and then we have to deal with it, it's a different situation. And again, this is a little bit of a spin on this, but that's part of act as owner, is that, like, you know what? I messed that up, whatever the reason might be. We need to fix that, make it right. And that's part of that individualism related to why we say act as an owner, even if, you're just 3 weeks into the job.
Yeah. I mean, owning the problem and the solution, right? Not just admitting I made a mistake and walking away, because that doesn't fix the problem. At the end of it, the problem has got to get resolved.
Well, I think I can tie it back to act as an owner. But one of the things Ford said, there's a lot of sayings. We're all, like you said, sports guys at heart, right? But the most successful person is not the person who didn't fail. It's likely the person who failed most, but just kept going. And this is a discussion we have all the time is do you love winning or do you hate losing? And there is a distinct difference, and you can do both simultaneously. But it applies here in act as an owner again, because as an owner, you don't have the option to just go home. You know what I mean? It's 4:00, you're done. Well, somebody else will deal with it. I'll be back in at 7, 8 a.m. and we'll work on it again tomorrow. As an owner, you take that, you sort of take it home with you. You got to figure it out. You got to reach that resolution because you have a problem. And that plays in again in this role, in this way that we looked at act as an owner, is that we want each of us to do that. We sort of expect it of each other, that if there's something that needs to be done, we're gonna do what it is that needs to get it done for the client, for ourselves, for our team, and for the company as a greater good. And another funny thing with act as an owner, and it's something I have to watch. If this podcast is just for us, everybody that's listening knows that I grew up in Jersey, right? It's not a secret. And I use I and me and way too many times. It's a New Jersey thing. I do it. But part of it's being from New Jersey, and part of it is the way Ford allowed the company to grow and allowed me to push when I wanted to push, when I thought opportunity was there and he thought it was safe enough. I felt like it was mine to push. I treated it like it was mine to push. And I think that same thing happens. Now, a lot of times when we have, if it's Bryan, and Bryan grew up more out here, he doesn't talk the same way I do, but you have the same attitude. When we're going to look for, the best insurance policy we can get for the guys, you don't take a them attitude, and you really most of the time don't even take like a we attitude. You see what is the best thing I can do? What can I get us that's the best? You're working for the greater good, but you're doing it as if you own that piece, start to finish, to deliver to the team. And I think that resonates, from Fordberg to a laborer that started 3 days ago. we need them to understand that that's where we come from, and that's really why these are so important to us, that we get them out in front of everybody.
Right. It doesn't have to be your name on the door of the pickup truck to know that it's yours to lose too. So,
I mean, as a funny side, how many meetings have you and I been in when they have no idea that you own Berg Construction?
I prefer it.
Yeah, I mean, it is a regular that they think I own Berg Construction, and Ford's like a fun guy I brought with me just to sit beside me.
I'm just a chauffeur.
Yeah, he's
moral
the chauffeur.
support.
Moral support here. But
I'm the secretary. I write notes.
hey, let's switch gears for a second before we wrap this one up. The other piece that you started to talk about Ford at the beginning was the stewardship component, right? And you mentioned it, like, hey, treat the thing like it's something you own, like it's something you want to have last forever. Because the better we treat our stuff, the better we take care of our resources, the more work they can do for us, and and replacing them is expensive. That's true of a lot of things. It's much harder to replace something than it is to maintain it, keep it working. So who can act as an owner? I mean, who's responsible for stewardship?
Boils back down to, as we say, team, we say we say everything, but that is a collection of eyes. That's the reality of it. And so, yes, is there a resource that we can go buy another shovel if someone breaks one? Yes, that's part of life. But using it incorrectly just because it doesn't matter is a different scenario, because that $25 cost comes from somewhere. That's the same thing with someone driving a vehicle and driving it unsafely, or going extremely fast and burning gasoline, or running into something. Again, accidents do happen, but I notice people, when they take that ownership, they care for it in a different manner. You go out and you see clean windshields on a machine. You get in a track hoe and it doesn't squeak the whole time. Yes, they aren't having to pay that payment, which hopefully no one ever has to pay those payments because they suck. But the reality is that, those payments and stuff, plus then if something gets damaged, that's just an extra cost that gets absorbed by the company. And again, that ties back to the whole win thing. But every time we can make something last longer by better maintaining it, or by trying to take a more safe approach, or making sure we strap it down 100% safely so that it doesn't fall off, or, a piece of pipe fly out the back of the truck because we were just trying to hurry home and we didn't want to do it, and then all of a sudden we lose it, or it hits some other vehicle or something. All those costs are absorbed by the company, and that affects our bottom line. It affects our ability to reinvest in the company. It affects so many things. Everything is tied together, even if it is individualized.
Well, and I want to touch on two things with the stewardship. One, Ford sort of hit on there about the cost. And normally if we're going to talk cost, Bryan's going to be the one talking cost. But I think of one of my friends, Joe. Joe owns a electrical construction company in New Jersey. He owned a bigger one in Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Delaware. And Joe and I were talking one time, and Ford was around, I think, when we were talking at that point. And Joe was going over sort of how he does different things with bonus structures and other things. And he takes those dollars that are off of damage and pulls them right off the bottom line in figuring how bonuses would play. Because he wanted to try and make a way that was palpable, that they could feel and they could see, like, hey, if we would have each gotten X amount of dollars more if somebody didn't just break that windshield, if somebody didn't, not strap down a pipe. So he tried to create ownership. Ford and I really don't want to take that path necessarily, but we want to build that level of stewardship, that level of ownership of this stuff. And three people came to mind while you were talking. Two of them they're in the landfill crew, so I'll hear about it later. They talk about the landfill. One is Greg Petersheim, though. Like, you really don't want Greg Petersheim's machine. I mean, you don't want DZ07. If it shows up, it means A, Greg doesn't have it, and you're already going to have to hear about it. But it also means B, when he gets back, there's going to be like the most thorough inspection you've ever seen. And there better not be anything out of place in that machine, or you're going to hear about it from Greg. He's not going to say anything to me. He's not going to say it to you, but Greg's going to let everybody know. Number two is, I thought about Gary, my Rambo. I get my truck washed twice a week. Like, I drive through, the guy hates me. I drive in the mud and then go right to the car wash. Gary's truck is almost always cleaner than mine, and he works in the mud all day. But that's how Gary acts. That's how he owns that truck, that piece. It is always clean. It looks clean. It's always washed. He was in the mud. There's only one way that truck got clean. It's because Gary cleans his truck constantly. The other one is Keith. So, and Ford actually told me about this one, that Keith will come on a weekend sometimes when he's not even on the clock just to wash his truck. Now, he's not doing it right now as much because his truck is down south. We haven't been moving back and forth, but he takes so much pride in his truck that he washes his truck that's our truck when he's not even being paid, just so that when he gets back in it, when he is getting paid, it looks the way he wants it to look. And I don't think there's really a better example of stewardship than that, than people who are taking the time when they're not even working to make sure that when they are working, things look and operate correctly. And if you do that, you can't help but be successful every day if that's your attitude when you're not even working.
Yeah, and if you apply that attitude to everything we do, right, when it comes to, reducing waste, being efficient with our time, taking care of the assets that we have available to us, internally, from the office perspective, understanding people's needs, and a lot of it's time management too. I think you apply those things top to bottom, the impact is just tremendous, And where we started with this was like, well, who gets to act like an owner? Who should act like an owner? And is it just Ford? Is it just Dan? Is it just Bryan? Is it, no, I mean, literally every person inside the organization has a role to play when it comes to taking ownership, especially of their area of responsibility, and acting in a manner that an owner would act.
And it's funny, and we could talk about this for a while, but another one that just came to mind in a completely different vein, but back to act like an owner, and when you're talking about all the ways that costs may hit you in different things, is special projects. I mean, frankly, special projects has made a living of utilizing the things that other people don't use, right? I mean, I almost, in my head, like in my New Jersey sarcasm, it's like a Tom Berg special. Like it's a Tom Berg modification. Like JD will know he needs something and he will take his time to drive around because he knows that we probably have it and someone didn't use it and then threw it in the boneyard, dropped it out back, put it in a trailer, and they're just going to let it sit there and then eventually it'll get moved around 10 times and we'll throw it away. And it'll be like, well, I can use this. And then all of a sudden we see JD, special projects, is never taking a hit. They're always super productive, very effective, very profitable. And part of the reason is because Scott, JD, Joe Stauffer, Levi, all these guys, they act like owners every day. So they don't just say, hey, I'm going to run to Zimmerman's to pick up this pipe. They say, hey, we have this pipe. It's just buried behind that trailer. We go get that pipe. We just saved 15%. Let's go get the pipe.
That's a great place to wrap it up. So another topic for another day. We'll continue on these core values, but I think it's great to hear the perspective from Ford himself and you, Dan, about the role each person has to play in these core values. Thanks, folks. We'll talk to you again soon.
See ya.